Hey there, Rednecks, Preppies, Redneck Preppies. It's me, the Redneck Preppy. How you doing today? Great? Good. So if you're a reloader or just someone interested in the pastime, you may have seen a recent news story out of Hillsborough County, Florida. According to news accounts written at the time, a man was reloading ammunition in his home on October the 7th when an explosion occurred, injuring himself, another person, and essentially leveling the structure that they were in. From the WFLA story at the time, according to Hillsborough County Fire Rescue, the man, who was currently in critical condition, was able to tell fire crews he was actively reloading small arms ammunition inside the house with around 6 pounds or more of smokeless powder near the area where the explosion took place just after 4:30 p.m. on Thursday, or October the 7th. Now, shoddy writing aside, it seems pretty cut and dried to me. If you're a reloader or interested in getting into reloading, just stop. It's too dangerous for the average person to do, and I think you should just leave it to the professionals. So, as always, may all of your shots ring true. Okay. I think there's actually a little bit more to this story. I'm not convinced that around 6 pounds or more of smokeless gunpowder was actually responsible for the explosion itself. Let me explain. Now, first of all, let me get pedantic. Smokeless gunpowder is not an explosive. It's a propellant. Very simply, explosives release all of their energy in a single blast, while gunpowder burns at a fast but very controlled fashion. Now, unlike explosives, gunpowders are actually rated by how fast they burn. And reloaders oftentimes use those burn rates, as they're called, to decide what kind of powder they should use in a given cartridge and for what kind of application. Now, in theory, any propellant can also be used as an explosive, but in reality, there's actually kind of little point to using that in place of an explosive if you're trying to create an explosion. Now, with powder, you would have to contain it long enough in order for the pressure to build to achieve a blast wave, something that you don't have to do with explosives. Now, for completeness sake, I will say, before somebody writes it in the comments, black powder does explode, but the man was very specific that he was using smokeless powder. Now, in case you aren't familiar with smokeless powder and its packaging, here is 1 pound of smokeless gunpowder. Now, depending on your perspective, this either looks like not very much or a heck of a lot of something, especially if there's 6 of them. For smokeless powder, it isn't really that much, but if those were explosives, then yeah, obviously it would be a bad day and pretty potent for something that you're trying to nuke. At any rate, so like I stated earlier, I strongly doubt that smokeless powder was the cause of the explosion itself. Now, I've never had a fire of any kind, let alone one that involves smokeless gunpowder, but there are plenty of accounts on the web from reloaders who have. And there's one consistent fact in all of them. The smokeless gunpowder never exploded. Now, I've seen accounts of a large store of primers exploding, and I'm talking thousands at the same time. And even those explosions were relatively small scale, as in one small part of a single room. In each case of powder that I looked at, the gunpowder didn't explode. It burned. Now, I even saw one account of a man who had a fire in his reloading room, one that involved dozens of cans of powder, which would have been over 20 pounds of gunpowder, and it just burned. It didn't explode. Granted, it was a hell of a fire. I saw the pictures of it, but it was still a fire, not an explosion. The reason for that is that for there to be an explosion due to gunpowder, there has to be an associated pressure, something that causes the blast wave, as I mentioned earlier. Most gunpowder, smokeless or otherwise, comes in a plastic container, and these split long before any pressure can even build. And it's also difficult to believe that the man had canisters of gunpowder that were in some sort of enclosed, sturdy container to get that pressure, at least within that larger container, but the gunpowder also ignited while it was in that container. Now, there's been plenty of conjecture that the man may have been cooking up some of Walter's White favorite product. I mean, it is Florida, right? Or that he was making explosives, something like pipe bombs or fireworks, with black powder. Authorities are laying no charges as a result of the explosion, and I think they'd be fairly quick to act if somebody was setting up an Al-Qaeda-style bomb factory in a residential neighborhood. Argued that he may have been cleaning his bench with something flammable, and that could have caused the incident. Again, there's no indication of that, so I don't know if I really want to go down that road either. I think it's probably more likely that he was in fact reloading ammunition like he said. And this wasn't, assuming, of course, that it wasn't just a dumb accident, that he could have been using some old black powder or a black powder substitute that he came across, something with a nitrocellulose base that hasn't been sold in years, and maybe he was just experimenting with it. Now, what I do know is that smokeless gunpowder can't explode in the way that most people think. Most of that powder would have been blown away from an explosion and not ignite, or at best, flash. There's no real opportunity for a pressure spike. Now, I also know that the explosion blew out cinder block walls in his home, which then subsequently caused the roof to collapse. But reportedly, his reloading press and some ammunition he probably reloaded before the explosion were sitting there intact. Personally, I wouldn't be surprised if he had a primer ignite while priming a case and it went off. Not normally a huge deal, but perhaps combined with some sort of gas or propane leak. Kaboom. At the end of the day, however, 6 pounds of gunpowder by itself is not enough to cause the kind of damage that you saw in that picture. Now, I'll be honest to say that we really don't have all the information about this. There may have been that perfect storm of things coming together, a confluence of variables, as the talking heads would say, that came together to have a reloading accident that results in the walls of your home blowing out and causing your roof to collapse. I've never seen or heard anything like this before, and I'm absolutely not saying that it can't happen. Just that we haven't been provided with enough adequate information to support the homeowner's claim that it was caused by smokeless powder. I maintain, though, that there is more to this story than we've been told. All that said, while reloading is a safe pastime, it does remind us that engaging in it in a safe manner is a prerequisite. That means keeping your bench clean between reloading sessions. Okay, I don't know how many guys I've seen brag about how much of a mess their bench is. Buy a small hand vacuum, clean it up every now and then. It means keeping only the powder that you're using during a reloading session on your bench, and only loading into the hopper what you actually need, or at least think you need. That means not being a gall-darned idiot and doing things like smoking or whatever during reloading. Some people do it. I don't understand why. That means focusing at the task at hand. Turn off the TV and the YouTube videos while you're reloading. That means wearing safety glasses during key steps like powder pouring and bullet seating. Smokeless powder may not explode, but it can flash and burn if ignited. It's your eyes. You do you. It means discharging static electricity in a proper manner before handling powder. It means storing your powder in a safe manner, and you can find information on the web on how to do that. It means verifying measurements regularly to ensure nothing is changed during the reloading process. Now, I could keep going on, but I think you get the point. You might think of me as some kind of safety candy ass because nothing has ever happened to you while reloading. Fair enough, but I also know that if I had $1 for every time I heard a variation of the words, I've been reloading for years and never had an accident until I could afford one of them fancy billing presses. This story is being reported as a reloading accident because despite a BATF and FBI investigation that aren't complete, journalists who don't know anything about firearms and anything related to them That's how they're reporting it. So some J school grad, here's that reloading caused an accident. That's how it's reported. So no question of whether the person claiming this might have had reason to pin it on something else rather than the hinky activity they might have been up to. At the end of the day, if you're a reloader or you're looking to get into it, you shouldn't be living in fear of the bomb waiting to go off in your reloading room. Like a lot of hobbies out there, you need a modicum of common sense and knowledge if you're going to, get into it and pursue it. If you're intent on being careless, dumb, or ignorant, plan on having a bad day at some point. If you follow basic principles like paying attention to what you're doing, checking your work, following instructions, working slowly and deliberately, you'll be fine. Properly store your gunpowder, when you are and aren't using it. Like I said, you can find information online on how to do so. At any rate, I hope you found today's video at least vaguely informative and somewhat entertaining. While I've gone through pains to try and convince people who may be afraid to reload that it is a safe hobby, it can in fact be dangerous if you're going to be an idiot, like most pastimes. Follow all safety steps, and when you're reloading, let that be the only thing you're doing at the time. Anyway, as always, I hope all of your shots ring true and that you have a great day. Take care, and bye-bye.